Hi guys, welcome back to Gearjunkies TV and a new video. In today's video we're going to take a look at the Uno Synth Pro by IK Multimedia. So the Uno Synth Pro by IK Multimedia, it is based on the original Uno Synth, which was a very compact little analog synthesizer with two oscillators and an analog filter and sequencer. And this one has a little bit more to offer. There are three oscillators and you can play them monophonic or paraphonic. And there's a dual filter, and it not only has a sequencer but also an arpeggiator. When we look at the casing, I think it's a very nice design of brushed aluminum in red and dark gray. And it also holds a 37 keypad Fader keyboard, which plays very nicely. They have positioned the pitch and modulation wheels on the left, which would maybe not everybody's taste, but it adds to the total design feeling of the unit. On the back are all the controls, so there's MIDI there, USB, CV gate in and out, and there's also an analog input. Further, it has a stereo out, stereo headphone out, and there's a separate power adapter input, and the power adapter you get with it. They advise to use it with the power adapter, although it functions on USB only, but to avoid electrical interference, they advise to use the adapter. Then there's its brother, the desktop version. As you can see, very compact, small unit. Obviously has no real keyboard, but a membrane keyboard and two touch sliders here for pitch and modulation. But the middle section is exactly the same as its keyboard brother, and this is where all the controls are. On the back are all the connections, the same as on the keyboard version. And it's very light, but also very plasticky. If you compare it to how this thing looks, this is much more sturdy, and I must say a very convincing unit to play with. What do we see here? We have the central control section with two dedicated knobs for cutoff and resonance of the filter. And then there's a matrix here consisting of 4 encoders, and a section here that shows you what function they have depending on which one of the 8 buttons you choose here. There's a small OLED display with a data encoder which can be pressed as well next to it. And on the right we have several controls for the presets, songs, arpeggiators and sequencers, which we'll see in a minute. Then there's here this row of 16 buttons, and this is for the sequencer. So let's take a look at what all these different sections do. First we have the oscillator section. In this case we see here wave 1 to 3 and sync, and by turning the knobs you vary the waveform of the oscillator, varying from triangle to sawtooth to pulse with modulation. This can be done the same way for all 3 oscillators, and there's a sync option, so you can sync oscillator 3 or oscillator 2 and 3 to oscillator 1. If you press the oscillator button again, it shows you the tuning of the various oscillators, so you can detune them as opposed to each other to get a more fatter sound. Then there's a mix knob. Here we see the levels of the oscillators, and when I turn them all down, we don't hear anything but noise, because there's also a noise generator built in. Let's turn up level 1, and I'll let you listen to the various waveforms this can take. Same for oscillator 2 and 3. Then we go to the filter section. There's a dual filter. So the first one is a 2-pole filter that can be set to various modes, high pass or low pass, and it sounds like this. And filter 2 can be set to various settings like 2-pole, 4-pole, low pass, and you can set it in parallel or serial with the first filter. Let me show you how that sounds. The knobs here, they control the envelope amount on the filter and the spacing, so you can set the spacing to have like a stereo effect when you use the filters in parallel. Let's check out the LFO section. There are 2 of them, so by pressing these buttons multiple times you can switch between LFO 1 and 2, and wave forms you can set with this knob, and there's a whole range of them: sine, triangle, sawtooth, reverse sawtooth, pulse, random, sample and hold, and noise. Then there's a rate and a delay called fade in, and you can synchronize the LFOs. Moving over to the envelopes, there are 2 envelopes. One is for the filter, one is for the amplitude of the signal, and both are 80s R-types. Now these envelopes are a bit special because they are very, very fast. If I would, for instance, choose a bass line here, like this, and we'll set the filter responding to filter amount, and we go to the filter envelope, let's play an arpeggiator with the sound and see how the different amplitude modulations sound. Now, ICA Multimedia advises to use the very low settings around 1 to 5 for very clicky percussive sounds, and to move the attack over a range of 5 further up to get like normal sounds for bass or leads. Then we have a matrix section here for the modulation, and there are 16 modulation sources that you can go through with this encoder, and for each one you can set a source and a destination. There's a whole range to choose from here, both in source and destinations, and there's an amount. So in total you have a lot of options to modulate your sound and make it stay alive over time. Really crazy options are possible here, I must say. And then finally, when we go back here, choose another preset and go to the FX section, you see 4 different effects here. Now the signal path of the Uno Synth Pro is completely analog. This means that the different effects are used as send effects, so it never compromises the analog signal path. So there's no analog digital conversion and back for that for the basic sound that the Uno Synth Pro produces. There are 4 different effect types: drive, modulation, delay, and reverb. And each one of them has a number of options. Let's see what the drive does. And by pressing the data knob, you can go into the details. Now, this drive doesn't have that many, but for instance, if I choose the reverb here, I can choose the type. And let me show you how that sounds. Let's choose maybe a different sound here. And increase the delay and reverb. And let's see what types we have here. Hall, plate, reverse, spring. And for instance, for delay, we got a number of options as well: ping pong, doubler, stereo, mono. And the modulation section here can be set to various types as well: chorus, phaser, flanger. So all in all, you have a really nice selection of effects to add to the sound and give it an extra dimension. Now the Uno Synth Pro also has a sequencer and arpeggiator section. When you press the sequencer button and press play, it starts to play the pre-programmed sequence, and you can record it in real time with the record button here, or record step time. Once you've done that and you want to edit the sequence, you can hold one of the buttons and it shows you the note value, velocity and length, and you can change all of those individually. In total, there are 64 steps for the sequence. You see the first 16 here, and with the page you can move through the different sections of 16 values. The nice thing about the sequencer is that it also records all the parameters, real-time parameters from the knobs. So for instance, if you would like to record some filter modulation of the frequency, you can do that by just using record and play, and then add the parameters there. Of course, you cannot really edit those, so once you've recorded them, the only way to change them is to record the parameter again. Then there's an arpeggiator as well, and this has various functions, so you can let me show you. Modulate the steps here, and there's a hold function. So the arpeggiator can be set to, for instance, forward or reverse with the direction parameter here that we can find under the alt function. And let me show you how that sounds. In contrast to many of the arpeggiators that I see on other synths, this one doesn't have a divide factor, so it always plays the 16 parts of the note section here. But you can change this by setting one or more of the values to on or off. So this is not exactly the same as a divide function, I think, but there's nothing else here. So maybe IK Multimedia can change this in a future update. Who knows? So there's some more things here. You can use the back and setup buttons to go through different extra parameters, tempo, voicing, so you can set it to legato, mono, or paraphonic. And there's a song section here as well, which enables you to chain various sequence patterns that you have made in a row, so it plays a longer song file. So finally, what do we think of the Uno Synth Pro? Well, it is certainly a very unique synth with its own sound. This is largely due to the double filter and to the fast envelopes. It gives us a very unique character. I wouldn't call the sound vintage. It's more sort of a modern analog. Can sound very hard and aggressive, but also very smooth. And of course, the paraphonic option gives you really nice opportunities to play decent chords with it. The overall look and feel is very, very nice. So on a stage or when you're doing a live show, this is a really nice compact synth to play with. The desktop version is, I would say, more of a studio machine. Of course, it has the same sound, but due to the smaller format and the fact that it's quite vulnerable plastic, I would suggest not to use it on the stage. Well, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you want to see all our videos in the future. I want to mention that there's also a sound video that we made of this Uno Synth Pro that you can find on our channel. We'll see you next time.